What's up? Yeah.
Right, Council, I see 701. I'm going to call the meeting to order. All right, calling to order the council workshop for Monday, November 24th at 7 o'clock. Council, there's been an agenda circulated with the package. Any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will someone move the adoption, please? Moved by Councillor Forbes, second by Councillor Back. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. We don't have any minutes circulated with the package, so we're going to go straight into business. I will note the most recent version of the agenda, 3.2, was withdrawn from tonight's meeting, so we're discussing items 3.1 and 3.3 this evening, which is the update on traffic calming project program that we're going to go into first, and then the 2025 Cove on street parking review. So at this point, we're going to update on traffic calming program retitled Neighbourhood Streets Improvement Program. Intro comments from senior staff, or Mr. Taha is ready to go?
Right to Mr. Taha, please.
Welcome. The floor is yours.
You click on the PowerPoint on the screen.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. And to those listening online, my name is Ihab Taha, the Transportation Manager at the District of North Vancouver. Today is our annual transportation workshop, and I will be presenting on two topics, the first being traffic calming and then Deep Cove on-street parking. Each presentation will take roughly 10 minutes, followed by a question and answer period. So if it's okay with the Mayor, I'd like to save the questions till the end of each presentation.
Okay.
The first topic is an update on the traffic calming program, including lessons learned, proposed refinements, and our recommended 2026 project. The district's traffic calming policy dates back to 1999 and was last amended in 2012, which remains the most current version that staff rely on. In 2023, Council approved the creation of an annual traffic calming program. The creation of a program was welcomed, as it gave annual certainty and budget in responding to community concerns. Overall, staff feel this program has been highly successful, providing meaningful wins for neighborhoods. The program has been well received, with residents expressing ongoing appreciation. The engagement process has been particularly valued. Through hands-on exercises and design charrettes, residents have felt heard and directly involved in shaping solutions for their community. Importantly, this program focuses on neighborhood local streets, areas that are typically not covered under other major transportation initiatives. Delbrook Avenue was selected as the first project under the traffic calming program to respond to a councillor motion directing staff to report back on engineering and design options to improve safety along the corridor. It's important to note that Delbrook Avenue is an arterial road, and as such, the available traffic calming tools were limited. Arterials are designed to carry regional traffic, support transit service, and provide emergency response routes. Due to steep grades and the nature of the roads, speeds on Delbrook have not materially changed and before and after implementation of traffic calming measures. The program budget has also limited our ability to address the full corridor, so we will be returning next year to make improvements on the southern portion of Delbrook Avenue. When we first made changes along Delbrook Avenue, we heard substantial concerns from both homeowners and commuters, many of whom did not participate in earlier engagement. In responding to the broader needs, we've had to make several adjustments to the design of Delbrook. These outcomes highlight that arterial roads may not be well suited for the traffic calming program, and that using the traffic calming model on arterials can compromise the program's original intent. In short, arterial roads often necessitate larger scope, more budget, more engagement, and a phased multi-year approach. Kilmer Road was the second project selected under the traffic calming program, and it was selected solely on resident requests. From staff's perspective, Kilmer Road was a much more successful application of the traffic calming program, allowing us to focus improvements in a shorter, well-defined segment. The intersection of Hoskins and Kilmer Road generated the most interest from the community engagement, with 28 requests for changes at that intersection. In turn, curb bulges and a new crosswalk were installed at Hoskins and Kilmer. Additional corridor improvements were also made, such as hedge trimming, speed reader boards, and a new pedestrian let down into Kilmer Park. A key takeaway from Kilmer Road was the significant divergence of opinion regarding speed humps. While some residents strongly supported them, others expressed concerns about drainage, noise, vehicle wear and tear. Staff were prepared to install speed humps at the district's expense if 2/3 of the adjacent homeowners supported them. However, we only found 45% support, so they were not installed. Based on the lessons learned, staff are proposing several refinements to strengthen the program moving forward. First, we recommend a name change from Traffic Calming Program to the Neighbourhood Street Improvement Program. The term traffic calming is strongly associated with speed humps, but the program has consistently involved a broader range or suite of options, including crosswalks, curb extensions, signage, and pavement markings. In essence, we'd like to move away from a one-size-fits-all methodology in favor of a more holistic approach and broader program name. Additional refinements include clarifying street eligibility to focus on local streets and select collectors, improving the online request form, requiring petitions for speed humps, collecting data before engagement, and focusing efforts on shorter, targeted segments of street. For the 2025 intake period, we received 339 unique requests across 109 streets. The top 6 requested streets are shown in the slide above. Berkeley Road and Frederick Road were the first and second most requested locations, and we intend to advance improvements on both of these streets, but through different mechanisms. Berkeley Road is very similar to Dell Road. It's a long, steep arterial corridor that carries transit and high traffic volumes. As you can see, requests are represented as red dots. As requests were dispersed along the full 2-kilometer length, making meaningful change very difficult under this program's budget because of the long stretch. As an arterial road, Berkeley is not recommended for selection under the traffic calming program. However, we still want to recognize the importance of Berkeley as the most requested street. As such, staff recommend advancing safety improvements through a separate capital project on Berkeley. Work is already underway to collect data and assess the corridor for targeted engineering measures. Frederick Road was the second most requested corridor and is a much stronger fit for this program. Resident concerns are concentrated within a 400-meter segment between Mountain Highway and Allen Road, making it feasible to deliver meaningful improvements within the current budget. All requests were honed into a single area, with each red dot being locations that were requested. Larger red dots indicate a larger concentration of requests. For this reason, staff recommend selecting Frederick Road as the 2026 project under the traffic calming program, or as we'd like to call it, the Neighbourhood Street Improvement Program. At today's workshop, we are seeking Council's feedback on the proposed program refinements. We are also welcome Council's feedback on the recommendation to select Frederick Road between Mountain Highway and Allen Road as of the 2026 project. Thank you, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Mall.
Hey, thank you for the presentation. For as long as I've been living in the district, traffic and speed has been raised as concern. When I read this report, it seems like we're moving towards selecting streets for improvements based a bit more on data analysis rather than this resident feedback. If that's the case, I'm okay with it because I think we need to find that sweet spot that balances between the two criteria. I did have questions about arterial roads, but you kind of clarified it in your presentation. But I guess maybe I'll still ask it. Arterial roads are a little more challenging to deal with because, they're for high-speed traffic and longer strips. You touched on it slightly. How will the issues for arterial roads be treated? Is it a different program or?
Through the mayor,
Okay.
Councillor Mott, thank you for the question. I think what we found is that most of our programs focus on arterial roads. All the love and care goes towards arterials. It's the locals, the neighborhood streets that people often drive by that don't get as much attention. So that's what's great about this program. We already have the road safety program. We already have cycling improvements on arterials. We already have active transportation sidewalk improvements on arterials. What we want to do is have a program that really provides an opportunity to make improvements on local and some collector roads.
Okay. There's one point that I would like to see articulated more in terms of planning for streets improvements. In the report, maybe I missed it, but I didn't see a lot of mentions about schools and how they fit in to this program. Because through the mayor, can you just explain how traffic around schools is going to be included?
Thanks for the question. So as you may know, and we've presented in the past, we're developing a strategic transportation plan, and we've identified 4 priority papers. The two of those priority papers are along school safety and pedestrian infrastructure. So we do plan to report back in the new year about how we'll tackle school safety. But as a spoiler, what I'll say is that what we'd like is to really focus our attention on school frontages and school, or at least within a 2-block radius of school. In the past, we've focused our sidewalk budget primarily on building new sidewalks on roads, some of which already have a sidewalk. What we want to do is really make spot improvements in front of schools in order to better target what the community is asking for.
So is that program kind of independent from this, or is there overlap?
I think there may be overlap for sure, like Frederick Road, for example, which is 1 block away from a school. So definitely that would be one way of tackling one of the schools, right? But we have 20 elementary schools throughout the district. So I think they're going to get our proposal is to prioritize those projects. And this is just one of those routes to prioritize school safety.
Okay. So in response to your questions, trying to get to it, so bear with me. It's basically yes, a little more detail on the third question. Sorry, your third question. I'm just trying to find it in the report. But
yes,
no, it's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just had some comments on it. Both in terms of the project as a whole and then the specific recommendations. So the project as a whole, I'm trying to remember how this originally came out. We recognized that ICBC statistics couldn't cover all scenarios. We were getting a lot of instances where there were anecdotal evidence that there were near misses or things that weren't showing up on the in the ICBC stats. And so we wanted to make a mechanism for doing improvements in areas that weren't necessarily going to come up to the top by the pure accident statistics. But I thought the context under which we did that was in response to the Mount Royal Elementary School Safe Routes to School advocacy that came up at the time. They were trying to improve the connections from Mount Royal to the school, and we decided that this general type of program would be the best way to address it. In the end, we picked Delbrook as the corridor, but we recognize that Mount Royal had some challenges too. And so why haven't we continued on with Mount Royal since that was the original impetus for the program?
Montreal Road or Montreal Elementary School?
Both. It was the connections between Mount Royal Road to the elementary school.
So our approach has been primarily to get feedback. How do I put this? Our approach has been to select streets that the community is asking for. So every street essentially is being requested. Our program is heavily oversubscribed. We had over 300 requests this year and 109 unique streets. So we're trying to be equitable in terms of which streets we identify, which streets we select. So the best way of doing that is really to get people to fill in the forms. And then when they fill in the forms, we would select and prioritize the streets that have the most community feedback. Now, the element of incorporating some level of engineering to that is what we're trying to bring into the program. However, what we really want this to be is a community-driven program. And we're going to get stretched very thin, but we want to select the ones that have the most demand based on our surveys.
I want to make sure that since that is the goal, I want to make sure that in the dozen different ways that people communicate with the municipality are coming into these requests. It seems these are reflecting people who sent an email in about a specific neighborhood. But we had 20 parents in the audience for Mount Royal that night, but I don't know that those 20 get captured in the request because they didn't come through the web form to do it. And we have Meet the Mayors where people raise concerns. We have, our Facebook pages are all these different sources. How are we making sure that people understand there is one way to make that specific type of request, or what efforts are we making to make sure that we're gathering the entirety of those requests for consideration?
Yeah, excellent question. I think we have been working with our comms department to make sure that this program is heavily marketed and people are aware of it and posted on social media, posted on our web forums. We'd ask mayor and council to also share the links. What we try to do, we're trying to be as transparent as possible. So for example, we received a petition for Kilmer Avenue. Through that petition, we actually entered each person's name ourselves into the program so that when we hear something, when we hear feedback from whether mayor or council or petition, we sometimes proactively go in and make sure that it's captured, but we can only do kind of the best that we can. So if there is a street that residents are asking for, we welcome that feedback in the program.
Okay. Locally with this particular project scope, I happen to used to live right smack in the middle of the project area in the 1300 block of Frederick. And unless something dramatic has changed, the volumes of cars on that street are nowhere near some of the neighboring local streets in terms of volumes of cars. So this only goes to Mountain Highway, but the 1100 block is where Argyle is and Frome is, and both the Frome section and the Frederick section there have a way higher volume of cars on it than this section does. And so I'm curious, it says in here we're going to collect data prior to engagement. How much data are we reviewing prior to making the recommendation? Because it would seem to me that having lived on that street and knowing the traffic flow in that area fairly well, this seems like it's a resident who's maybe organized some of the neighbors around a particular issue there. But I got to tell you that the traffic volumes are nowhere near the highest neighborhood streets in that area. I mean, you've got Wellington with all the traffic coming through on it from Princess Park area that uses it as rat run. We've got Shakespeare in the neighborhood where everybody avoiding 29th goes on. Those car volumes have got to be way higher than Frederick. And so I guess what data collection are we doing prior to the recommendation?
So our intention was that this is community driven to them. This program is primarily community driven. So while we use a lot of data to determine a road safety program, for example, which is based on speed and volume and everything, this program was primarily intended regarding perceived safety and near misses, as you put it. So we really want to be as fair and equitable. Shakespeare, for example, was on our list. I believe it was number 6, right? To come here and recommend Shakespeare over Frederick when Frederick was so much higher is puts staff in a challenging situation. So I think the primary intention of this program is to be as fair as possible to the communities who are asking for it.
Okay. So it's best campaign gets you the priority for the next bit. I'm not trying to be unfair about it, I'm just saying that's the avenue to make the change on it. Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, I think just to kind of add what Ehab's talking about, I think the magnitude of this program also reflects the fact that this, of all the programs that we have, this isn't a major, massive program from a funding perspective. It's $200,000 each year. And so I think this is just identifying that this is just an opportunity to have kind of what is that highest concentration of feedback we're getting from the community to at least show progress in this space. But the transportation team has a bunch of different other programs: road safety, pedestrian safety, safe routes to school. There's all these other programs that collectively have a substantial more program budget, and that is where the data and the engineering can still let that work go forward as well. So just kind of wanted to address the magnitude comparison. So.
Oh, I get that it was to create some complexity intentionally in how, so that you can have different things rise to the top under different scenarios. I get it, that's fair. Okay, Councillors Ma, Hanson, and Back. Muri, Hanson, Ma, and Back. There we go, sorry.
Good thing you didn't forget me.
We won't forget you.
Yeah, I won't let him. So I guess I would like to understand more, instead of focusing on, 2 streets for traffic calming, more along the lines of what the mayor is asking for. Like, how are we prioritizing these different areas? What is unique about the areas that is creating more traffic than just local volume? What are the opportunities for the municipality to go in and create traffic calming versus a program that is, whoever, gets the most people on a signature list is the winner. We talk about arterials, and I still don't understand, after all these years, arterials ineligible for traffic calming, and yet I go into the city all the time, and 15th is an arterial. It's busier than most of the roads in the district, and it's got speed bumps all the way down 15th to Lonsdale, between Grand Boulevard and Lonsdale, and yet we are absolutely opposed to any kind of raised crosswalk or speed bump on a road in the district that's classified as an arterial. We have, as an example, Apex has just been opened up into the Tsleil-Waututh lands. There's thousands of units in there, and the expectation of a new artificial turf field on the Tsleil-Waututh lands that's going to be open soon, and traffic is going to be using Mount Seymour Parkway. What are we going to do to calm a significant, like 100 times the volume on Apex that it has now? Because right now it's just, half of the Garibaldi area is being accessed by Apex. The other half is coming off the park, off Mount Seymour Road. So how do we address that? We've got Riverside Drive, no sidewalks, gravel sidewalk, gravel shoulder for part of the road, a fast curvy road with cars parked on it, headed to, Metro Vancouver's Lower Seymour demonstration force access through, why can't I remember the name of that trail? Help me. Oh, you guys, come on. Don't we know? No. The one off at the end of Riverside Drive. The Fisherman's. So how do we make a decision about that kind of road that's driving regional traffic into an area to be able to access a Metro Vancouver public asset? That's what I'd like to understand, how we're doing all of this. And then if we want to talk about the implementation of infrastructure to slow traffic down, how do we prioritize that? I look at Edgemonte right now. I've never seen so many delineators in the intersection in the village. We've got a lot of delineators in the Seymour, whether there's a bike lane or not. They're on the side of sidewalks. They're being used massively, and I'd like to understand a little bit more of that. And then the cost of all of it. We've talked about sort of the platinum models of all sorts of things, sidewalks, intersection, sidewalk cuts, traffic calming. How do we prioritize the level of infrastructure, the cost of the infrastructure? Can we do more with less and still get the same result? So I feel like this is more about 2 roads that we're focusing on and changing a name and, you know, petition. We already asked for a petition. We already collect data, focused on targeted segments. I guess that's the 2 road. Clarify street eligibility. Well, I'd like to, you know, support residents in neighborhoods where they feel rat running is occurring. But I'd also like us to just go out and make some decisions in areas because it's the right thing to do. Because for 20 years, we've been hearing from people about roads being too fast and the population is increasing. And they have to get on a list and somewhere fall into 339 requests. I mean, none of us are going to be here by the time we get through that list. And if we only have 200,000 a year, under this program or all of it? Like, is that, Mr. Cohen, 200,000 a year is for traffic calming?
Yeah, so that's just for this particular program. If you don't mind me just continuing to answer that. I think one of the things not to forget, council, is that we're just embarking on a strategic transportation plan. So a lot of these questions on how are we approaching these types of transportation questions at a strategic level across the community, that's the conversation through the STP, which will involve the community, etc. That's a much, much bigger conversation than a $200,000 annual program. So that is something that EHAB and the team has commenced. Tonight, it's really just talking about this very discrete, what's the 2026 candidate? Should council want to proceed?
I think we need to, you know, when are we having that conversation about the bigger picture? When's that coming?
I'll let EHAB kind of answer. We've already started the conversation.
Through the mayor. So the strategic transportation plan has started. We'd like to start some level of engagement and do a kickoff early in the new year. And definitely if council wanted us to come and provide an update and what the procedure is for the strategic transportation plan, we could certainly do that in the new year.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a necessity that council knows what this plan is about, because we are, you know, we're very connected with our neighborhoods and our communities. We know how they operate. You know, the mayor speaks of his experience in Lynn Valley, living there and understanding that system. You know, those of us that live in different areas, we understand those systems. So we need to understand this. We need to know what you're wanting to do. Because we've had some implementation of infrastructure that the community was like, what's happening? You know, they're not sure. You know, the communication out to the community is really important, and I don't know if we're getting to everybody. I don't know if we can simply rely on our website. I think, you know, like the Cove, you know, everybody here except for one is from the Cove tonight, or Berkeley too. But if we had a town hall, for instance, you know, I'll tell you that there'd be 150 people in the town hall that would fill the yacht club or the cultural center if we went down to into the Cove and talked about traffic calming. If we went up to Lynn Valley or to Delbrook or, you know, any other part of the community. Edgemont talked about traffic calming and what the community wants to see. If we had actual town halls rather than relying on, you know, websites and social media, you would get standing room only, because it's the biggest issue in the municipality is traffic and speed and the dangers of everything. So that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see something like that come back in the new year so we can really go out and engage with our residents and talk to them and ask them what they think and get the data that way. So that's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
That's right. I just want to check in. Maybe I missed it. Was there a response on transit on arterials?
Yeah, why can't we put speed bumps when the city can?
Through the mayor. What we found is when you do try to do traffic calming along our arterials, whether it's vertical deflection or horizontal deflection, you might actually get 10 times the amount of mayor and council inquiries. Because a lot of people drive on those roads, and it's not just the residents who live on there, they're regional routes as well as transit routes. So you'll have transit passenger comfort that you have to take into account. Our emergency response times would be affected, so that could be a life critical impact for some residents. So there is a balance between and by the way, that this isn't to say that we're not doing traffic calming outside of this program. I just want to focus that this program was intended to be community driven. We have a lot of other programs where we continuously want to find opportunities to improve neighborhoods. However, we want to have a program that involves community more through a design shred, through engagement, through a hands-on exercise. That might not be as appropriate on arterials, but it is definitely appropriate on locals and collectives.
So I would just say that it would be interesting to get that information back from the City of North Vancouver in regards to emergency response times, transportation. They've put them in, they've been in there for years.
Yeah.
Initially, when there's change, like the bike lanes on the Parkway, there was a lot of noise. People didn't like it. Now people have gotten used to it. It's more comfortable. They understand it more, right? So until the snow comes, and that's going to be a whole different thing. We'll deal with that when the time comes. But the City of North Vancouver did an extensive traffic calming program in their city. They put the bumps in. Yes, they dealt with some response, and they're still there. They didn't remove them. But as far as I know, I've never been told that there's an emergency issue. So I'll just leave it at that.
I think the main point of the response was that the transit-oriented routes tend to fall into the other projects just fine, the other ways of addressing it. So they're just saying it's not the best use of this program. They're already being captured in the other programs.
But I think that's what we need to understand a little bit more, the other programs, and then that bigger umbrella of an update and how we're going to roll that out and how we're going to engage with the community before we actually do it. I think council needs to understand that, and the community would like to understand it as well.
The phrase horizontal versus vertical. So when you're saying vertical, you're saying speed bumps, and horizontal, you're talking about narrowing?
Narrowing or chicanes, like where you might put an obstruction in a road and people have to drive around it. Yes, it slows people down. If we did that on Dutbrook, it would be problematic and could cause a crash. So it's a matter of balancing a perceived safety from actual safety. So sometimes perceived safety is that I feel unsafe, but actual safety is I feel unsafe, so I'm going to slow down. And because I've slowed down, you've made the road safer. So it's a matter of balancing those two competing interests.
Thank you. Next, I have Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Taha, for your presentation and for your report. Thank you, Mayor Little and my council colleagues for the comments. I agree with the general comments that have been asserted. Just dealing with this program, as you say, this discrete program, and asking a couple of questions. On the topic of the speed bumps, you say, well, you're going to require a petition and you're going to require 66% support from abutting property owners. Why wouldn't that be 50% plus one? Why are we requiring a non-democratic majority for speed bumps?
Through the mayor. So the 66% is applied to the City of North Vancouver, it's applied to the district. It was applied in Coquitlam and Surrey when I worked there. It's a pretty common number. It's 2/3 support. And the idea here is that speed humps, residents change, communities change, but speed humps are very controversial, are very contentious by some residents, and they do impact the drivability, the access to specific properties. So the idea here is that we want this program, the whole point of this program is to meet community expectations and to serve the community. So if we're not getting overwhelming support, then why are we doing it? The whole point is to do something that has overwhelming support. So that's why we think 2/3 is an appropriate number, so that we know it's not just, because what we find is that, for example, Kilmer, 45%. 45% told us that they want the traffic calming. 55% said they would burn this district to the ground if we had traffic calming. So very strong opinions, like to a degree that they loved it. Some people loved it and some people showed up to District Hall asking to speak to me on several occasions about these speed humps. So we should take a neutral position. If it was solely based on data, it should be based on 85th percentile speed. So that's when you would put the speed hump. But in actuality, we're trying to meet this support of the community. So that's the intention of this program, and that's why the 66%.
I appreciate that, and thank you for your answer, and I'll leave it at that. But I think if we're neutral, then, and if a majority of the abutting property owners want speed bumps, a very good argument could be made that that would be a fair way of approaching it. By putting a 66% supermajority as a requirement, we're effectively taking a side in the speed bump debate.
What's the percentage to remove them?
Say 50% plus one.
Well, but this is the point. We ran into this with Riverside. So Riverside Drive, 25 years ago, went through and
22, because I was pregnant with my second daughter.
went through and the district went through and put speed bumps down the whole length of Riverside to slow everyone down. And then as soon as we did it, a much larger number of people from the community showed up and said, no. They actually formed the Flat Earth Society to fight against speed bumps. And
Flat Earth Society.
Well,
It was awesome.
you're leaving out a very important part, though. When we did agree to put the speed bumps in, but when they were installed by the municipality or by the contractor, they were installed incorrectly. So they were much higher. They weren't the standard, and that's what created the chaos.
It was a 50-kilometer, or it was a 50-kilometer-hour road, but they had more than 50-kilometer-an-hour speed bumps, which
Higher.
yeah, it was problematic. But we can't be in a situation where it flips a few people and all of a sudden we're
Hence,
undoing
we
it.
make the decision.
So I don't think it's unreasonable to have a higher threshold, but
Point taken, thank you for that. All right, now we deal with Berkeley, and I drive Berkeley every day, and I'm speaking now specifically on behalf of my community of Blue Ridge. And Berkeley, as you pointed out, it received the greatest request for the initiative. And I appreciate the arguments you've made and why it's not included, but I mean, we did see on that map, Bendale, Carnation, Shishell, big red circles, very serious issues from our point of view in terms of safety on Berkeley. And you said in your report there will be opportunities for improvement. And so my question would be, what can we expect in that regard? What should my community or what should Blue Ridge expect with respect to opportunities for improvement of safety on Berkeley?
And it's got a regional destination too, the trails in Highland.
Yes.
And it's a huge volume.
right. Campaigning, Tarla, Mr. Tom.
Thank you for the question. So it is being prioritized, just to be clear. The idea would be in the next year or two to make improvements. We are in the process of collecting data at this point to see speeds, to see volumes, to see where people are crossing. I've already have some ideas of what could be done to improve it, but I think I'd want to see the data first to get a better idea of where best to target. For example, ICBC crash data and analytics, looking at that and seeing where the crashes are happening. So to make sure that we're investing our dollars for the best bang for your buck. That's the goal here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tarr. We wait. I can speak on behalf of the Blue Ridge community. This is a significant issue for us, is Berkeley, the traffic and safety.
Thank you.
Thank you from the counselor from Blue Ridge. There we go. I got councilors Ma, Back, and Pope.
I spoke already, but I'll come back at the end.
Counselor Back.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mary Little. You have a very challenging job.
You're so happy.
We're all acknowledging that. Thank you very much for this report. I think it's important to remember why this program was created. And I'm glad to hear that there's comments around the table tonight about being more bold around road safety. But the reason this program was created or needed is because the district historically has not been very proactive, certainly nowhere near as proactive as the city when it comes to prioritizing the safety of the most vulnerable road users, people that are walking their kids to school, people that are, riding a bike, what have you. And so as a result, we're in catch-up mode and trying to make streets safer here, there, and everywhere. And we have multiple programs. This is just one. And I think for, the resources that it has and the way it was set up, I think it has been successful. I think, just having something that kind of can help address those community concerns that come from the community around certain streets, I think it's been a good program to have. I think we have to be clear with what we can actually accomplish with the budget that we have. It isn't very much, as it's been highlighted, but I think when it's used properly, we can make some really visible differences that do improve road safety in the different areas. Because people have had to fight for, what I would say is pretty basic right to be able to, move through your community safely when you're not in a vehicle. And I think that's historically been the case in the district. I think it's a culture thing in the district. It's not in other municipalities. So I'm looking forward to the strategic transportation plan because I think we certainly need an overarching plan to guide us to how we're going to address this, from a higher level and how that's going to flow through all the different programs and plans. So I very much look forward to that. Just in terms of tonight's ask for direction around Frederick, very familiar with this stretch of Frederick, and I know that there's the elementary school, there's 2 daycares, there's before and after school care, dance schools, all within a half a kilometer radius or less. So I think this certainly is an eligible corridor where we could make some real difference just with the budget that we have. I'm glad to see that we're renaming the program. I said from the beginning that traffic calming puts the emphasis on cars and it should be around neighborhoods and street improvements. So neighborhood street improvement program, I like that. I think that's a good positive change. I think what we need to do is make sure that we're communicating this program as well, as we possibly can. Right now, I don't think it is. I think we need to be a little bit more out there with, letting residents know that this program exists. Letting them know the limitations of this program because it's not a be all end all. It definitely has limitations, but show some examples of how it can be used. The shift away from arterial roads, I think that has to be clear that, obviously Berkeley, and I don't live in Blue Ridge, but I definitely know the opportunity that exists to improve the safety along Berkeley, but you have to be realistic and you can't do it with a $200,000 budget. So I think just making sure that we're managing expectations and being clear in all our communications around the program. Actually, in terms of the application program, I wonder, we do it through RAP now, right? People go on. How do they submit a request to the program? I guess is my question.
It's through the website.
Through
what was the traffic calming website. And one thing to note about that is that it actually is a 3-year. So if somebody requested it 2025, we would still consider it in 2028. The idea would be that it's not forgotten, so it keeps a log of every person who's requested for at a minimum of 3 years.
But I think that's important, though. Again, the only way that it gets tracked at this time is through that one particular web link. Is that correct?
Yeah, just to add to the conversation, we get the team gets dozens, if not hundreds, of emails on a weekly basis that relate to transportation issues, and so I know that when someone submits a report a problem or just sends in an email with a concern on their local neighbourhood about traffic calming or safety, whenever the team responds with saying, hey, here's our response, they're saying, if you would like, here is the program and a link that we have if you want to fill out the form. So we do it in multiple ways across the team of just trying to highlight just in general communication. And I don't know what the conversion rate is for folks to actually go and fill out the form, but they are definitely directed towards filling out that form, just so that everything is in one spot because we get a large volume of communication.
That's right. Councillor Pope?
Yeah, just picking up on that, I also am just concerned about the data collection and that we're not taking everything into account in making the decisions about what falls under this program. But I'm just wondering about, like, in particular, Mountain Highway. You know, it was in this past year that we heard from dozens and dozens of parents about Mountain Highway. And I'm pretty sure they aren't encapsulated in this number 15 here. So that led to a lot of council discussion about how, you know, safety could be improved along that particular stretch of Mountain Highway and up to Kirkstone. And so can I get an update on where that's at now, and if, you know, how better these safety needs could be addressed in that particular stretch?
Yeah, through the mayor, I think Mountain Highway is a perfect example of 200K wouldn't do much for improving safety on
Right.
Mountain Highway. And so that's why Mountain Highway had a multi-year engagement process. It involved multiple stakeholders, involved working directly with the school district. And so we are paving the road, I believe, early in the new year, and making safety improvements along that section, including the curb bulges and left turn bays for improved visibility and that sort of stuff. In addition, but the Mountain Highway is very long, so we have to come back with other segments of Mountain Highway that also warrant improvements, but beyond the scope of
But
this
I'm just concerned about, and the focus was on that, 4, 5, 6 block stretch there. So you're saying that indeed, I can pass along to residents who've contacted me since that work will be started in the new year?
Be nice if we could have an update as to exactly what's gonna be going on, so there's no surprises.
Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, so council, we've had the discussion earlier in the year as it relates to Mountain Highway in terms of what proposed changes are there. We're coordinating with the Public Works Department, and when the weather gets better next year, that's when the paving is planned to happen. Staff can certainly send an update to council as it relates to more specificity on that one. But I think Mountain Highway is a really great example of these corridor studies that we do. I believe it was in about 2020. We did a holistic corridor analysis of about 4 or 5 different corridors. Mountain Highway was one of them. That then led into engineering analysis of understanding what's the crash data, what are the speeds, and what are the volumes. And then that goes into how do we piecemeal this into being discrete projects. So if you look at the budget, there is a discrete single line item for Mountain Highway as a project, as opposed to being buried inside a program. So that's how we approach some of these larger investments. And so let's just say, as an example, Berkeley, once we do all the work, we identify that, hey, this is a project need, then that could potentially start to be seen as a single line item in the budget, as opposed to buried into a program. But we need to do our work just to understand what that looks like first.
Through the mayor, we typically try to find mechanisms to deliver these projects. So, for example, Berkeley, even if like we don't want to wait 5 years to make improvements on Berkeley and through a multi-phased approach. So if we're repaving a road, for example, we'll try to coordinate improvements as part of that repaving. If we have a road safety budget, we'll try to use that budget also to make improvements along these arterial roads. So definitely, our goal is to serve the community and to the best of our ability.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Forbes, did I see your hand?
Now you do.
There you go. Okay.
Just following up on the Kirkstone thing, when you say that you're starting all this in the spring, because have you had those conversations with transit and with Hydro about moving what we asked the bus stops to be moved, 2 bus stops to be moved?
Through the mayor, yes, we have. We've had conversations with both BC Hydro and Coast Mountain Bus Company. And the bus stops at Kirkstone are being relocated so that there's more opportunities for.
They're going south? The southbound side is go south?
Yes.
Farther south?
Yes, so that a bus is not blocking the travel.
Yeah.
So that was the conclusion there. We're also working with BC Hydro, and I believe our goal is to relocate that hydro pool to maximize the pedestrian staging area at that corner for people walking to school.
Okay, thank you for that follow-up. I'm just curious, if we have 109, we get down to 109 streets, and we're only talking about $200,000, I think as Councilor Murray said, we all won't be here before all these roads get tackled. So can you foresee any other way that we could, other than increasing budget, which budget is very hard at this time, can you see any other, without doing huge improvements, that we could go into more than one street a year and do minor improvements that maybe don't even cost the 200?
Through the mayor, I think we most of the time, if we get a request that's, let's say, $5,000, right? We try our best to just do it, right? We wouldn't go through a program. We wouldn't try to micromanage our way through a process like that. I think what this program was to target a specific segment of road. However, we would still try to, make improvements incrementally as we get RAP cases, as we get requests. If something can be accommodated within existing programs beyond this, by all means, we want to do that. We don't, I would suggest if we were to identify more than one street a year, I would suggest more budget, because what we find is that we have other programs to do these things, and the community, there is some level of expectation from the community when we select a street. They want us to do more than usually just a delineator or just a line marking or just a sign. They typically do have some level of expectations that we would implement some infrastructure as part of that.
Maybe we need to have clear and more transparent conversations so that their expectations don't get higher than what we can do.
Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, I think to add to Yev's comment and Councillor Forbes, we're always going to be oversubscribed in transportation. I think that's quite clear. We hear it from the community. The team hears it every day and trying to make all the numbers work. I think where, if I listen to your question, I think what are our priorities in transportation and how do we move forward and where should we be allocating funding? That is really a fundamental core element of the strategic transportation plan. We want to be thinking about globally across the district, what are the 2, 3, 4, 5 priorities that we should be prioritizing investment in. And so right now we have a number of discrete programs or discrete policies, and sometimes they're competing for cash. And so our hope as staff is that as we start to work through the strategic transportation plan in the new year, and that's going to take quite some time, that's going to help really float the key priorities to the top. And then ultimately in future years, that helps us prioritize where budgets go if they need to dial something up or dial something back, because cash is really hard to come by right now. And so we need to look at what that means. So that work will help influence what that looks like.
Just 2 other questions. I just picked up on you said it will take some time. So you're not expecting to have the strategic transportation plan next year? It might be past next year?
Yeah, when staff presented to council, we indicated it would be roughly a 2 to 3 year timeline. And that is, in terms of the regional precedence of the strategic transportation plan, that's actually quite an aggressive timeline. And it all depends on where the conversation goes with the community council. So it is a significant piece of work for us to undertake.
We may have to move a little faster if the housing density goes down. One other question. How, I'm assuming when you say if it's 5,000 and it's a good thing to make something safer, you would spend 5,000. So I guess I'm asking, do we put up signs for dead ends, no access to the beach, no turnaround, things like that? Do we put up that kind of signage? That would be under you consider that like the 5,000 thing?
Yeah, so there's operating budget and capital budget. Typically, operating would cover your signs, your pavement markings. We're in regular communications with our streets crews. If we need a sign, we need something, we have budget set aside for operating works.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Councillor Mo.
Yeah. Thank you. Good discussion among my fellow council members. Look, there are many pressing issues in the district, like all municipalities. And, I believe that transportation is the #1 issue that we face, full stop. And, I listened to Councillor Back saying that we have to remember what this specific program was to do. And it was to provide a way for residents to get directly involved in selecting specific streets for staff to work on. there are many initiatives going on, and we need to provide staff some latitude to work on these projects and to defer to the strategic transportation plan, the bigger issues. Is working on Frederick Road going to solve all the issues? No, but it'll make that little area a little safer. Then we move on to the next street. It's so easy to kind of look at a little program and say, hey, it's not going to solve everything, but it's not meant to solve everything. It's to take a little bite and then move on to the next street. Thank you.
Okay, I guess that sort of leads into my last question here, which would be, what's council's role in this? So we endorse the program generally. The program starts running on its own 2 feet. It's already got a decision-making matrix as far as requests from the community are concerned. Is that how you anticipate council's role going forward? Is that we're going to look at the top ranked project and affirm the top ranked project? Or is council's role going forward going to be, we support the program and we back away? What are you anticipating the next year's update of this program to look like?
Yeah, I would suggest, like, just as a reminder, this program is very much in its infancy. So part of the reason we brought it today was just to, confirm and validate our assumptions, confirm and validate our methodology. Now that I think after 2-3 years now, I think it's a much more established program. What I would recommend is that at least once a year, we send an information report to council that identifies what the project is for that year. And should council want to have that discussion, by all means, we would come back and provide more context for that specific selection. But that would be my recommendation, just to year by year, and then save our council dates for, like, the bigger strategic transportation plan and our more broader discussions at a higher level.
The report calls for receipt for the report. Is there a mover for receipt? Councilor Ma, Secretary?
Sure. I just have to ask a clarifying question though.
Yep.
See, you're saying this program is in its infancy, but we've had a traffic calming program for years.
Yeah.
So there's some minor changes to how you're looking at it, but a lot of the people on the list of 339 have been on that list for quite a while. There was at one point where we had a program, and it wasn't too long ago, where we started all over again. We asked everybody to resubmit their applications. So lots of these applications have been in the queue for a long time. And people go with all this work and then they wait. And that's, I guess I go back to my question, what is our responsibility to look at some of these areas and traffic on them without having to rely on the community?
So what I was referring to in the infancy of the program, I was referring to the way it appears today. There's been other forms of traffic calming since 1999, since the policy was adopted. However, I think the current form that it's structured, where it's very community driven, there's design charrettes, there's heavy stakeholder engagement, it relies extensively on the community. That program has only started since 2023. And so that's what we were seeking feedback on today. But by all means, like I said, this program is not the only program that we undertake traffic calming. There are other programs. This is just the one that's exclusively driven by community.
I think there's an important point there, though. Like, the requests, do they become stale? What's our obligation to sort of accrue them over multiple years and then?
Yeah. I think so. Our current rule, and probably because, is 3 years. However, we are very open to expanding that to be 5 years or reducing it to be 2 years, right? I think there needs to be some level of cutoff, because after a certain point, people move, the community changes, the expectations of the community may change. And so I would recommend putting a threshold just to make sure that whatever street we select reflects the community at that time. So 3 years is the current threshold.
So I don't know if that, a threshold is not gonna work, because I'll just tell you right now, I was around when we originally created this program in 1999. And I'll tell you that the same issues on Riverside Drive existed then, and they exist today. And the community doesn't change that much in single-family neighborhoods. It's not a starter community. It's a community that when you get here, you stay here for generally the majority of your life. You raise your family here. So I don't support a cutoff. I think that if we can't accommodate it, we have to be upfront and clear. I do think we have to look at prioritization, and I do think we have to look at the costs and some of the mechanisms and some of the infrastructure that we're implementing, because I think that's what's increasing the cost, where there's some simple fixes versus some of these very big processes. And I'd be really interested, now we're going to talk about budget, but I'd be very interested in looking at some comparative costs of this work against maybe simpler fixes. So anyway, is it a big discussion? I have not had all my questions answered tonight, but I look forward to the next discussion in the new year.
It's been moved and seconded for receipt. I'm prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Report is received. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 3.3.
Your Worship, I have declared a conflict over this subject matter.
Double check with the time. That's all we need.
Yes, through your worship, previously it was related to owning a property in Indian Run. Is
That's
that
correct.
correct this time? Great,
And
thank you.
having a parking pass.
And you have a parking pass, right?
Parking issues.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much. Good night, everyone.
Mayor Little, would it be okay if I requested a 5-minute washroom break?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's fine. You can have a stretch. All right, let's get going again.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Deep Cove parking is the second item on tonight's agenda. I'll be providing an update on the Deep Cove on-street parking management system, summarizing what we've learned over the last year and outlining several potential refinements for Council's consideration and feedback. Deep Cove continues to be a challenging area where we aim to balance competing demands between residents, businesses, and visitors. It is a constrained environment with limited curb space and very high seasonal demand. These pressures far exceed available supply. As I'm sure we can all appreciate, there is no single solution or magic bullet that resolves all of Deep Cove's parking issues. Our approach has always been to make incremental improvements, monitor outcomes closely, and adapt based on lessons learned. In 2024, we implemented a number of changes to respond to the community's concerns and to support Council's direction on parking management in Deep Cove. We are here this evening to report back on the performance of those changes. Initial measures included the establishment of resident exempt time limit. The overall goal was to support residents while still offering reasonable access to visitors and businesses. To evaluate how well the new system is functioning, staff collected data over the last few years. The most recent counts were completed in late August during peak visitor activity. The results confirmed the expected patterns in which the highest demand continues to be at the village core, and occupancy levels decrease as you move away from it. Many streets exceeded the 85th percentile occupancy threshold, and we've observed clear spillover into nearby streets that have no restrictions, such as portions of Rayburn, Lockhaven, and Eastridge. Overall, the data confirms that while the 2024 measures improved conditions in some locations, additional management tools would help address ongoing congestion and spillover pressures. In September, as part of the broader strategic transportation plan, staff presented the curbside management priority paper that described the tools available to manage on-street parking. These tools range from unrestricted parking to time limits, to pay parking, and finally to increasing fee limits as demand grows. Typically, we follow the 85th percent rule. meaning that when parking exceeds 85%, we consider additional measures to promote turnover and improve access. Past 85%, drivers will circle multiple blocks searching for space, which continues to impact congestion and frustration. Furthermore, parking operates as an interconnected ecosystem in which changes in one part of the network affect other parts of the network. For example, Deep Cove has off-street pay parking at certain parks, but does not have any pay parking on street. Parking pressures could spill over as drivers will look for free on-street parking to avoid off-street pay parking. Effective management typically requires applying a consistent approach both on-street and off-street. All of that being said, I want to emphasize that on-street pay parking was considered out of scope of this exercise. The only reason I bring it up today is should council wish to explore on-street pay parking to better manage demand in the Cove, staff would prepare a detailed strategy for council's consideration for any implementation. Before discussing potential next steps, I want to highlight several improvements staff have advanced in 2025 and into 2026. We upgraded signs and pavement markings to improve clarity and safety, including new no stopping signs, refreshed yellow curbs, object markers, and enhanced wayfinding for visitors. We extended the hours of Deep Cove traffic management at Gallant and Panorama to operate until 5 p.m. instead of 4 p.m. We also plan to update the district's website to consolidate all Deep Cove information into a single, more user-friendly page, including walking routes, transit, and micromobility options. Finally, staff are reviewing the use of license plate recognition technology to streamline enforcement of resident parking and to modernize current decal and pass systems, with potential implementation targeted for summer 2027, subject to further technical analysis and operational readiness. Our first recommendation would be, based on the observed data, staff recommend the introduction of new 3-hour resident exempt time limits in 3 areas where we observe consistent spillover: Rayburn, Lockhaven, and Eastridge. These restrictions are intended to protect resident access while still providing short-term visitor parking. In addition, we are proposing select no parking zones on Eastridge to improve sight lines, create additional passing opportunities, and on narrow sections and support emergency access. The current Deep Cove system includes 7 parking zones, and this level of granularity can be confusing for residents. It also creates administrative and enforcement challenges. Staff recommend consolidating some of the existing zones into a smaller pool of clearly defined areas. A simplified zone structure would improve consistency, support more flexible enforcement, and align with a future transition to a digital license plate-based system. At present, the number of resident permits available per household varies significantly between zones, ranging from 1 permit to as many as 5. This structure was originally intended to reflect the differing demand and capacity in each zone. However, it has resulted in perceived inequities and excessive administration. Staff recommend reviewing and revising the permit allowance to create a more consistent and transparent approach across all eligible dwellings. This adjustment would also support the eventual shift towards modernized plate-based digital permit systems, potentially reducing reliance on physical decals and visitor passes. To help guide the next phase of parking management in Deep Cove, staff are seeking council's feedback on 3 items. The first being the proposed parking restrictions on Rayburn, Lockhaven, and Eastridge. The second being the potential consolidation of existing parking zones. And finally, the potential refinement of the number of permit passes per household. We also welcome any broader feedback on the current parking management approach in Deep Cove or on the staff-initiated improvements underway. Finally, we recognize that Deep Cove is a challenging environment. And as I mentioned, there's no silver bullet. We hope to work closely with council to make incremental improvements and to respond to real-world conditions in a thoughtful and data-driven way. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you. I've got Councillors Miri, Ma, and Pope. Councillor Miri.
Thank you, Mayor Little. So I think we have to look at the root of the problem, and we're always trying to find solutions. And the root of the problem is volume. And the volume started in 2010 when Instagram became a thing. And everybody wanted to get a picture from Quarry Rock. That's when it started. That's when this traffic started. And it's been getting exponentially bad ever since. And I take the position that we can't manage the volume. We can put expanded parking restrictions in, we can have a car driving around with a camera, picking up people's plates, and the chaos in the Cove when the weekends are nice, on the long weekends and in the summer. And it doesn't even have to happen on the weekends anymore, it's any sunny day. People are gonna come and they're just gonna drive around until they can find a parking spot as close to the Cove as they can. And we let them do that. We've been letting them do that for 15 years. Last year, we put in a program of parking passes. Finally, we got some resident-only parking passes put in after years and years of talking about it. And we put in a system that was complicated and challenging and actually hitting street against street. And now we're gonna come up with another solution because we don't want to say, like every other community in the region, Horseshoe Bay, Commercial Drive, the West End, use the lots and the parking on the street is for the residents. Use the lots. Sea Cove is half empty because no one wants to walk from Sea Cove down to the Cove. So they keep driving around the Cove and they go down Rayburn and up Lock Haven, and sometimes they don't park right, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they make U-E's in the middle of the road. And we let them, and it's not working. Horseshoe Bay, you cannot go into the municipality of West Vancouver in Horseshoe Bay and park on a side street in the residential neighborhood. You have not been able to do that for 40 years. Commercial Drive's the same thing. You have to park in the lots with a select number of roads outside of the Commercial Drive area, and everything else is for residents. They just don't allow people to drive around the block over and over and over again. This is an impact not only on traffic and congestion and safety and a line that goes all the way down Deep Cove Road. It is an impact on our park system, the sustainability of our trail system. We're pumping in $250,000 next year to fix just a set of stairs that go from the top of the driveway off Panorama Drive up to the first level trail for Quarry Rock. $250,000 just to be able to deal with the stairs because they're so eroded from the kind of traffic that we allow up there. Garbage has never been more of an issue than in the last few years. Last year, we had to gate the blue district containers next to the kayak shop because we had bears getting into them. So now it's fenced. We have our garbage, and we heard at the budget meeting that we're actually going to be shifting some of our garbage service, and the comment was made, well, we're gonna make sure that we have enough garbage service in the Cove in the summertime and we'll shift the winter. But winter is no longer the off season. And with every year, the increase goes up, there's more people coming. So any savings by restructuring that service level is not going to last. A few years ago, we put in a mechanism when we put in pay parking in that all that money would go back into the park system. Now we're being told in this report that increases on traffic are going to cost us more money. And now we're looking at a system of a car driving around to deal with license plates. In a time where our budgets are so overprescribed, we're looking at more cost. Instead of telling visitors that want to come down to the Cove, you're welcome to come to the Cove. but we have 5 lots, 6 lots, and this is where you're gonna park. And then resident parking only, the streets in the area, north of Mount Seymour Parkway at Deep Cove Road, and have a selection of streets around the village to accommodate some of the commercial. That volume of people is more than enough, especially when those lots turn over because of paid parking. And let's provide a carrot for the school district. Let's put some paid parking in only for the summer when we get to use those lots and give us some of the money to the school district. I don't know why we don't want to listen to the residents. There should be no visitor parking on Eastridge, Lock Haven, Cliffmont, or Rayburn, period. None. I'll send you video. I'm sure you've seen it because residents have sent it to you. And we welcome all of you to come down on a long weekend in the summer or in the spring and stand there and watch what happens. Stand there and watch what happens when people are driving into the side of the shoulder. They're backing up in the middle of the road while there's 30 people walking down Rayburn. It's not working. It is absolutely not working. And the community is done. They've seen too many near misses. It's dangerous. It's not sustainable. It's not livable. And we need it to stop. I've been talking about this for 15 years, and nothing is getting closer to solving this problem because we don't want to say visitors park in the lots, residents park on the streets, and the commercial zone can be a little bit of both. So I'm disappointed that we are isolating this issue and not looking at all of the other issues that are contributing, which is the volume, the impact on our solid waste, and the sustainability of our trail system and our parks. We need to look at all of this. And I'm also disappointed that we didn't get any of the parking revenue numbers. How much revenue are we generating from parking in these lots? How much is that going towards helping with this service issue that we've got in regards to garbage or extra rangers or bylaw officers? How many tickets are outstanding? People don't care if they get a ticket. It's $50. They're paying it. They're parking on the road and they're paying the ticket because it's like, no problem, we're here, we've driven all the way from Richmond or White Rock. We're just gonna suck up the $50 ticket and stay there all day long, no problem. So it's not working. It's a dead end and we need to do something. We need to pivot and let's just do a pilot to see if it works because it's gonna work. It's worked in every other municipality that deals with this kind of traffic congestion. Commercial Drive does it and they're a grid. There's one way in and there's 2 ways out, right? We are one way in, you do a U-turn and you leave. And it's not working. So I don't support continuing on with the program as is. The RPO parking pass has been super complicated. Just as an example, on Strathcona Road, at the very top of Strathcona Road, you can go down to Little Strathcona. And there's a group of residents with a little lay-by that have been parking on that street for years and years. It's just the people that live there. And in the winter, in the summer months, we actually removed that part of the lay-by for people to park in, but we allow them to park there in the summer. No one parks there except the people that live there. No, people think it's a driveway. They wouldn't even know it was a road. And so we've changed things that have made no sense, even when the residents have complained. We take a while to pivot. And if I know one thing, the people that live in that community know how that area works. They absolutely know how it works. So when they say this is dangerous and we can't accommodate this kind of volume, that is the truth. That's 100% the truth. They know, they live there, they watch it every single day. For 15 years, they've been watching chaos, and it needs to stop.
Next, we don't allow applause, cheering, or boos because we want people to feel welcome to share diverse opinions. The next speaker I have is Councillor Ma, followed by Councillor Cole.
Thank you. I have met and spoken with some of the Deep Cove residents. about their concerns for traffic and parking. We need to recognize that the Cove is a special place within the district. However, the residents are being negatively impacted by the popularity of this area as a tourist attraction. And look at this report. The plan calls for a balance between residents, businesses, and visitors. They're all important to our community, to being a vibrant community. However, in my opinion, we need to make one circle bigger. The concerns and needs of the resident should be given a higher priority. Next are the businesses, and then finally visitors. In this report, also on this page here, expand parking. Can you just bring that up?
Sure.
Yeah, I have a question about the plans for Rayburn, Lock Haven, East Ridge. Currently, I believe there's no restrictions along these stretches of road. And the report proposes, the red area, the no parking, no stopping, and a 3-hour resident exempt parking. I've been up there. I've toured it with a couple of the residents. The roads are narrow, and that's a steep road, and I'm told that it's still within our guidelines, but it's a steep road. I'm curious to know, with this proposed layout in the blue, how many parking spots are going to be preserved by this in those kind of blue areas?
Through the mayor, we believe that about 28 spaces would be preserved on Rayburn, 26 spaces reserved on Lock Haven, and 24 spaces reserved on Hayes.
Roughly 70 to 80.
70, yeah, take it.
How many parking spots or parking spaces are there in the whole Deep Cove area? Do you have a ballpark?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, through the mayor, I would say, I think from last year, we were in the high hundreds to close to 1,000. I could get that number by the council.
Okay.
We do have a nice one on hand.
Let's say 800 for,
Sure.
these are 80 spots out of 80, 10% roughly. To me, that's not as important as making it safe for the community. In my opinion, staff should consider making this a resident-only area in peak times. I do like, on another issue, I do like the idea of the LPR, the license plate recognition, and hopefully this speaks to being more enforcement in the area. Is that correct? This LPR is meant to be for enforcement?
Yes, correct.
Okay. I'd like to ask the staff to consider something else. From once again, going down to a meeting with some residents there, my understanding is park rangers or TCPs are usually based at the intersection of Gallant and Panorama. And I think you had a slide in there that shows after a while the lot's full, the local traffic only. I would say there's other hot spots in the Cove. Talking to residents right around the loading and unloading area around the kayak center and then along with Rayburn. They tend to be hotspots as well. So I would ask the staff to consider whether they can deploy some of these resources to those areas as needed. Because from hearing from the residents, those hotspots also create congestion points, and it just makes the whole area very difficult to move in. So I appreciate the approach that the staff are taking, trying to do incremental and get feedback, but it has been a long time, and there are some things that are working in certain parts and not others. So I'm not sure if I would support putting the expanded restrictions there, because to me, the new 3-hour exam is still going to encourage people to come up there.
Through the mayor, so I want to emphasize one of the slides that I presented today was parking is an ecosystem. Parking spaces don't disappear. If somebody drives from Richmond or from Delta or from Surrey, they're still going to park in the Cove. So every time we implement RPO, we're slowly chipping away at availability. So I'm not, to be honest, and I know this might not be a popular opinion, but industry practice is actually everybody's moving away from RPO because in favor of flexibility, using our limited curb space for a multitude of functions, a multitude of users. You don't want to reserve this spot for this business and this spot for that business, as well as this for visitors and this for, you want it to be a blended rate, a blended pool of availability. I know that's not shared unanimously across council, and I appreciate that. However, I'm just here to provide the technical feedback, and that's typically what the industry is moving towards, is making sure that there is flexibility across multiple uses. Now, that's not to say that I don't appreciate the issues on East Ridge, particularly with the steep grades. And if council wanted us to come back with a different proposal, for example, banning parking on both sides of the street and no stopping areas, that's certainly something we could do if safety was a major concern. But I would not recommend RPO specifically.
I respect the professional opinions of the staff. I would say that your comment that you're trying to find that balance is based on having those three circles of equal size. I'm saying the circle for the resident is bigger, so it's going to dominate or it's going to influence some of those decisions, and maybe it is.
And I do agree with you that the residents should be bigger. So if we were ever to pursue, for example, pay parking, it would be pay parking resident exempt, right? Like these are the sorts of things we would, that by all means, the people who live through this day in and day out should be given priority.
Right. Okay. On that, we agree. Thank you.
Councilor Pope.
Thank you. Thanks for your report. I pretty much agree with both of my fellow councillors and what they've said already in this regard. I have seen myself that the growth has increased so much. Really, I think it's more since COVID than anything else. Post-COVID, when everyone discovered the great outdoors and how much North Van had to offer in terms of the great outdoors. And it's not going to stop. It's going to keep increasing. And that means these problems are going to get worse. And I've watched while we've been, I think, abundantly patient with these small measured step approaches to making change. And I feel like we have now crossed the line where it's not being responsive enough to people who live there and residents who live there. That in these areas in particular on East Haven and I was out there today touring around. Mayor's, thank you very much for that. And it just seems completely ridiculous to me to have any parking going along there at all. It really should be a district-only residence, and the same along Rayburn. It's just gotten so out of hand and so intolerable for people. And I don't know why we have to keep leaning more in favor of visitors from outside the district or from wherever to support them rather than the people who actually live here. And I have said ever since I've been on council that I really would like to see other ways of coping with the volume. One is better active transportation, the Spirit Trail to Cove, but another one is shuttles. And I've never understood why we can't get some shuttles going as a pilot program to move from Parkgate or from the schools, from Capilano University, from wherever, especially on the weekends. If we could just do that on weekends so people could go in groups, park their cars in empty parking lots on the weekends out in those outlying areas, and then catch the shuttles in. Entire families could go. They could put their kayaks and their blow-up stand-up paddle boards on the rooftop or on side hinges or whatever. This is the way it's done in other places. So I would really like to see some effort to make that happen. I would like to see a report on paid parking. I think that, that some areas surrounding the Cove proper, where we don't have paid parking right now, could be, you know, in the core of it, could be a paid parking. And I noticed that in, that West Van Ambleside has already made the shift to the plate-based monitoring system. And that seems to be working quite well for residents, just to be able to, residents just register their plates with their registration, and that's how it's managed, and everybody else has to pay. It's outside of West Van. The problem there is now all the drivers are moving out of Ambleside because they don't want to avoid the pay parking, and moving farther out into Ambleside where all the businesses are, and now the businesses are upset because they're not getting the traffic and the flow of customers that they have been getting. So I recognize it's massively complex at all times, but I do think we need to move a little bit faster at this point in time and just take some strong steps that will improve things for people who live in Deep Cove next year.
Thank you. I probably have some unpopular opinions on the matter. I've had 3 kids who work in the Cove. I'm in and out of the Cove all the time. I live near the general area. I'm in there on a regular basis. I also have a bunch of friends that live on East Ridge, and 3 of them that live right near the end, and I'm down there all the time. I know the area very well. I think there's an element of progressophobia happening where people don't want to acknowledge the good stuff that has happened for fear that it'll stop us from doing other things. The reality is we've been making minor and major changes to the parking for 10 years down there. And some of the things have actually really worked well to give options for residents and businesses. And some we had to change after multiple years. And I gotta say, you know, as much as we're dealing with more volume going into the area, I think that a lot of the changes that we've made in the past number of years have actually been very positive for the Cove and for the businesses, which is an important thing to recognize. It is a business village as well. RPO doesn't address safety. I think you were trying to deal with that. I fully support RPO exempt in places, but if you decide that there's a safety problem, then simply switching who owns the vehicles has no bearing whatsoever on safety.
Correct.
And so an RPO designation, because you think it's it's unsafe, doesn't actually help you solve the safety problem. So I don't think it's an effective tool for addressing that. I would say that I don't know that we need to make dramatic changes this year. I think that we could still take another year to see how the most recent changes affect volumes coming into the area. Fully supportive of trying to get more service from the 211 and the 212 into the Cove. Shuttles have had challenges. The places where we've tried to use shuttles like Cap Suspension Bridge and other things, they haven't worked real well. People would much rather drive around and around and go back and stop at a parking lot and get on a shuttle. And you don't have a way to control that in the area. And so I think better transit service into the area from a much broader space is probably a more effective way to get people out of their cars coming in there. I like the signage issues that we've put in place to warn people about the limited parking environment, to give them a heads up and wayfinding to where we have alternate overflow parking places. I think that's all good. And I don't see us needing to make large changes right now. I do think that eventually we will be talking about a paid parking situation scenario with some resident exempt access. Eventually. I'm not quite there yet. With the specific recommendations on East Ridge, I'm okay with what staff have recommended here. I think that most of that area is, you can fit a car, and I think that the concerns that have been raised about whether or not fire departments have access to the area, I think my understanding is the fire department is okay with this configuration. Do we have confirmation that that was reviewed with the fire department?
Yes, so yes, we've been collaborating with the fire department and they support the staff proposal.
Okay. Where I would question it on the Eastridge specifically, since we got the slide up, so that blue section in the last part, sort of you've gone over the hump of Eastridge and you're starting to come back down towards the cul-de-sac. There's an awful lot of driveways on that side, and so I don't think you're actually going to add in many parking spots in between them. When I'm dropping off my kids in there, usually I have to stay in the person's driveway because there isn't enough space between the driveways. They're large lots in that they're 400 feet long, but the frontage is actually rather limited. And so, like, how many spots are you actually going to get in that last blue section once you remove all the driveway spaces?
Yeah, I'd estimate there's approximately 9 spaces there between the driveways. There's one section that has about 3 spaces, but generally speaking, there's no more than like 1 space between any driveway.
I don't think it'll be a.
And I wanted to just expand on that. Of all these streets, Eastridge is definitely the one that we struggled with the most. And it is rationale to potentially make it no stop on either side. So that there is rationale for that, especially because it's a dead end road. So by all means, if that's what council, we're trying to balance that versus against providing more supply. And so our proposal was to keep parking on one side and clarify where that parking is. Just to clarify, this map is very high level.
Yeah.
Once we get there, every fire hydrant, every driveway, it might be very different, but it gives you an idea of what our objectives were, which is to keep parking on one side of the street.
Yeah, through most of the year, not the peak of summer, granted, but through most of the year, that area is used for neighbors and for people who park to walk their dogs in Wickenden Park. There's a bunch of trailhead entrances on that side of the road, and people go up into there. You see it all the time up there. So I don't know that that's the concern we're talking about here. We're just talking about peak volumes expanding way beyond the village. So I support what staff have recommended here. I do think we will eventually have to go to some sort of paid parking mixed model or something for the area, hopefully with a resident exemption and maybe some other recognition for locals. Panorama has been, we've done a lot of work on the other side of Cove and Panorama. We don't hear a lot from the Panorama residents. I think we've mostly hit a bit of a piece there, although I will say that I'm still not entirely comfortable with the number of permits that were given out to non-residents of Panorama. So we went to resident only, but then we allowed people who access the area through the marina a number of the parking permits on the 25 through 2700 block of Panorama. And I've never really been a supporter of that program. I think it should be for the immediate residents in that area only. But as I said, I think we're largely not hearing a lot from the Panorama residents at this time. So maybe there's some measure of comfort with the number of parking passes that are there. Although I will say I did have a number of people come to my Meet the Mayor session in the 2500 block of Panorama, and they were having some issues where they couldn't get enough parking passes for their own operations. And I said, well, that's the challenge. If you want 4 per house, there will be no spaces available on the street. So that's, again, an education piece. Like I said, I think there's some progressophobia. We've had a lot of good things that have been very effective and helped down in the Cove. And I do want to acknowledge staff's work on that over a great many years and the changes that we've had in a very tense, difficult environment. But I think this is a reasonable next step without another set of drastic changes in the area. Next speaker I have is Councillors Back, Murray, and Forbes. Councillor Back.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is another massive topic and certainly something that, it's been a big thing that first staff to have to build and then refine as we go along. And I think, the mayor's pointed out a lot of the positives that have come as a result. And I think there have been a lot of areas where, we have made improvements that are working in the Cove, and I'm glad some of those were highlighted. I wanted to ask if there has been, specifically from the businesses in the village core, if we've received much in the way of feedback. I know, one of the things that might be an issue are, as a resident pointed out, delivery zones right in the Cove. In some cases, there's been examples of where the bus has been blocked there by vehicles making deliveries in the Cove. But I'm just wondering, through the mayor, if you've heard any other kind of concerns that the businesses have brought up.
Through the mayor, I think that one of the comments, generally they're supportive of time limitations because it increases turnover. So the more turnover is generally supported by businesses. We have increased loading zones in certain commercial areas. These loading zones are probably the highest level of turnover, and that's why they're usually 5 to 10 minutes. So they're the most efficient use of that curb space, especially for business needs. Where newer developments, we require off-street loading spaces so that they get off the street and do their loading deliveries on site. But for some of these older businesses, especially in the Cove, they don't have adequate on-site loading. I don't know, Matt, do you have any comments regarding businesses?
Yeah, we do have one commercial loading zone, I think the one you're referring to, that's near the bottom of the land. I agree with your comments that I think general support. I think that there is always tweaks that can be made to suit some operations better. The size of the loading zone that we provide near the kayak center in terms of people being able to load and unload their equipment. So these are things that we're kind of keeping our eye on and trying to understand where, slight provision of a slightly different restriction or slightly shorter time restriction could allow better traffic flow in some of those areas where people are just trying to get as close to their destination as possible.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we should be looking at, particularly as people can't necessarily park, close to where they want to go. But if they can go and they can drop off their gear for the day, whether it be their kayak, their picnic equipment, and everything else, then I think that those areas become more important as parking becomes more limited. We are balancing, 3 very different groups for sure. I tend to agree with my colleagues. I think residents need to be, somewhat prioritized in terms of, what they're experiencing day in, day out. I do have to, agree with what you said about, unintended consequences when we start locking down, big streets to resident only. It will put pressure in other areas. So I'm cognizant of that. But in this specific example of Lockhaven Road and Eastridge, for the sake of 9 spaces in that lower section, especially, I'm generally supportive of making that resident parking only, both sides. But I think it's something, we continue to we'll have to look at this just as parking has always been a deep Cove. We look at it and kind of refine it as we go along. I agree with the mayor. I think in the village core where we're seeing repeated 85% plus occupancy, that paid parking is going to be something that we have to look at as a tool as well. Have we made it easier for people to get to the Cove when they're not driving? We've made some progress. Certainly Mount Seymour Parkway is a whole lot nicer to travel on now when you're not in a car. It's definitely much more bikeable and that has helped. We haven't made those kind of improvements obviously along Dollarton. But if we really want to see people get to the Cove outside of the private automobile, then we're going to have to provide alternatives. So things like better and more frequent bus service plays a role in that, as do safe cycling routes. So just to point out that we have a long ways to go as far as some of those things go, but generally supportive of the plan that we have and the sort of tweaks that we continue to make. So thank you.
Councillor Brack, Councillors Murray and Forbes. Councillor
I
Murray.
don't think Councillor Forbes has spoken yet, so I'll defer to her.
Councillor Forbes.
Thank you. Welcome. I don't have much to say in the sense that it's what I was going to say has already been said around the table by just about everybody around the table, but I will point out Eastridge, as you mentioned, is a dead end. The grade, I think, is an unacceptable grade. I drove it in the pouring rain on Friday, and I was kind of hanging on to my steering wheel. The visibility, I first of all, I think Eastridge and Lock Haven definitely should be no parking. I don't think having a 3-hour resident parking on Eastridge for the sake of, like someone has already said, 9 spots makes any sense to me. Safety should be more important, and the comfort of the residents to get in and out of their place should come first. I met with some residents and I heard about road rage incidents where the cars are going one way on Eastridge and then they're coming down the other way or down on the lower part, down by Lock Haven. And they've been driving around for those 3 hours for those spots and they're so mad, neither one of them will back up. And then we get into road rage incidences. The other concern up in the Eastridge, top part of the Eastridge, is the garbage. We're bear country. And when we allow all that incident parking through the day, people are just dropping their garbage in the bush. And that just creates more of a problem because we are a bear safe community. I think it should be, I do think it should be no parking at all. Definitely on Eastridge and Lock Haven, and I think we should consider it for Rayburn as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Murray.
So I'd like to have some information forwarded to council. I'd like to know how many tickets were issued last summer, parking tickets. I'd like to also know how many are outstanding. I'd also like to know how many signs we have in the Cove. There's an enormous amount of signage that is very distracting when you're trying to drive in, find a parking spot. You've got a 3-way or a 4-way stop, but one is one way. You've got a flagger with a sign that says parking lot full. You're trying to figure out where to turn around. The access has been changed to the lot and Panorama Drive 2 years ago, which caused great confusion and some multiple traffic jams because we allow parking on the side of, on the street outside of the parking lot. So I think there's a lot of information that we need to understand. I don't think there should be any visitor parking in this area whatsoever. Lock Haven is a dangerous country road that was not meant to accommodate and Eastridge and Rayburn and almost every other street in the Cove north of Cliffmont. They were just not built to accommodate this type of volume. I also want to understand how much revenue we've brought in by those parking, pay parking in the parks. How much money are we generating? Because I'm not sure that it can't offset the costs that we're looking at. And I don't think that there's going to be support for more pay parking on the streets, regardless of whether or not it's a tool. It was already hard enough to get pay parking in the lots, and that was under the proviso that the money would be returned back to the parks. Now I feel like we're looking at it as a general revenue, a revenue generator for the general budget in the District of North Vancouver, and we're going to start to like it and get used to it and want that money because budgets are tight and we don't want to have to pull back on anything. So I think there's going to have to be a very, very big conversation with the community because it's not just going to go into the Cove. We've already been told that staff want to accelerate it in the town centers, on the streets to create demand management. I mean, I have to emphasize that, the idea that if we just put more bus service in, the buses are full. There's like 30 people standing at the end of the afternoon in the Cove. Most of them are international students getting on the bus, right? Like, people just come there because the population in the region is growing, and it's like, oh, we gotta go check out all these places. We gotta go see what it's all about, right? You could keep bringing the bus service, but there's still gonna be as many cars coming from outside the region. They're not getting on the bus. It'll take them all day to get there, and it's gonna take them all day to get back. It's just not going to take off the edge of the volume that is coming into the area. The area cannot support the volume. It's the same reason why the people on Beachview and Roslyn and Baycrest fought the Spirit Trail going to Kate's Park, because that was going to be the exact same thing. Cars flooding into the area, getting on a bike and riding the flat part to the Cove. Like, it's just the volume coming into the area that we can't handle. Mount Seymour, and during COVID, they had to put a reservation system in up on the mountain in order to continue operating. When COVID was over, they never took it out. They maintained the reservation system on the mountain for the ski hill. And do you know what it did? I mean, you guys didn't experience it because you weren't here, but on a sunny day in the winter, if there was snow on that hill, there was a lineup down Mount Seymour Parkway. You couldn't get to Indian River Road. You had to sit in a lineup and go into a left-hand turn lane, and 2 lanes of traffic were going up Mount Seymour to find a spot in one of 4 lots. And when they put the reservation system in, we had huge challenges. We were dealing with the rec commission. People were parking at the rec centers and the library, anywhere they could. They put a shuttle in. They did put Mount Seymour Resorts put a shuttle in. And then we had problems with people parking everywhere to get on the shuttle. When they put that reservation system in, it was like the flood last year. The tap turned off. There was no lineup anymore because the user gets a nicer experience. They know they're going to get a parking spot. They bought a ticket to ride the chair, to ski down the mountain. They don't have any of those parking challenges. We dealt with that for decades. And a reservation system is what did it. So if we want to solve this problem and you want to do turnover, Bunsen did it as well in Annamore and Port Moody, because they had to close the road because there was so much volume coming into the area. They have a reservation system, no problem. There is no problem. So I just think we are not understanding that this is a volume issue, and you can have a car driving around with a camera on a roof taking pictures of plates, but you're not dealing with the volume. You've still got people coming and driving around the block. On Rayburn, at the top of Rockcliffe, cars are parked on angles around the corner trying to tuck in to like hedges to get a parking spot. They're blind corners. You know, it is unsafe. People are walking, 5 abreast down the road while cars are backing up. It's unsustainable. And so trying to, deal with these parking areas to try to get more people in, why? Why? The businesses do well. If you have a good product, your business is good. That little donut shop has been around for, I will tell you, it's been around for 45 years. 45 years. That's when it started, with a little fold-up table and a tablecloth and donuts and peanut nut cookies. It started when I was in high school. That business has survived and done exceptionally well because they have an exceptional product. That's why they survive. So this idea that we bring more volume into the community to support the business, I worked in the Cove for like 12 years. My father ran a hardware store. I know exactly what it does. If you have a good product, you have good service, you do well. And businesses lasted there for years and years, far before Instagram, and they were successful businesses. So this idea that if we shut off volume, somehow the businesses are gonna die, it's just not true. It's not true, and it hasn't been true for all the decades that the Cove has existed. So I want to understand where, if you're wanting us to give you direction right now, I won't be supporting any visitor parking south of, is that right? My direction, southeast, east of Rockcliffe, Thank you. East of Rockcliffe. I don't think there should be any visitor parking down there, and I think we need to look at other areas as well that are as challenging with the steepness as this area. I might remind everybody, the Cove is at the base of a mountain. It's at the base of the mountain. Yeah, everything is steep in Deep Cove.
Yeah, so just to recap what the reason for the report, just to provide council with an update and seek council's feedback. It's not seeking specific direction, but they're collecting your feedback for future discussions. Anybody else like to participate?
I'd like to hear from the people who came.
We will, yeah, okay, but we've gone through the council list. Okay, all right, well, we do have a council policy that time permitting, we have an opportunity for members of the public to provide their comments and feedback. We do have a sign-up sheet that went ahead of time. We normally set it to 10 minutes. I think we've got more speakers than the 10 minutes would allow, but so I'll probably have to ask for council to extend that at some point, but I'm going to start off with Karen Henkel.
We're a focus group and James is going to speak first. John is going to speak second and Karen is going to speak third.
As long as Karen's okay with that, that's fine by me, although the second speaker I have is Bev Parslow on speaker. So if you want to, would you prefer I have Bev Parslow go first and then the three of you can speak together?
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, Bev.
Can speak, go ahead.
So there's a group of us from Eastridge Lockhaven that got together and tried to organize our information. And I'm just going to talk about safety, not disruption or traffic jams or stuff like that. I've seen a lot of accidents on the road, and I'm an engineer by trade, I'm retired, and I wondered if there's objective standards that we're not following in safety on the road. So I did some research, and it looks like the design guide for Transport Canada Association, Transport Association of Canada Geometric Design Guide for Canadian Roads is the definitive guideline for road design and how steep parking is. It's used across Canada. It's referenced in Vancouver bylaws. And its guidance on parking is parking areas should be designed with minimum slope, ideally under 5% to ensure vehicle stability, pedestrian stability, and emergency access. Steep grades above 8% are discouraged for areas with high pedestrian activity or constrained geometry. And I went and measured Eastridge Lockhaven, both of them at peak grades of around 22%. So it's not even in the same ballpark of what is considered safe. And another point of reference is if you go and get a wheel shock to put behind your wheels when you're parked on a steep hill, they're rated for up to 18%. So even if you were to use wheel shocks, you're not safely parking on the street. And part of that is we're getting a constant stream of accidents on our street.
You can pass the pictures around, just hand them to Jordan.
There you go. We have our neighbor who gets a bunch of people come by him every weekend commenting, does he have video coverage of the accidents that happened on the steep road outside of his house, whether he has a paper and pen to write a note to the person who was damaged in the accident. So the theoretical unsafety of parking on such a steep grade is not just theoretical, it's actual practical unsafe. And I don't think there should be any parking on steep grades anywhere in Deep Cove, but Eastridge and Lockhaven are prime examples of where it's unsafe. Another issue is Eastridge Lockhaven is a narrow road and there's no sidewalk and there's no area beside the road for people to walk. So when cars are parked along the road, the only place that pedestrians can walk is in the middle of the traffic lane. And in addition, there's only one lane of traffic and it's a cul-de-sac. So anybody that goes up the road, it has to come down. If they need somebody, they have to back up. And it isn't just that they have to back up, they have to back up 22% grade on a road full of traffic, full of pedestrians, some of them carrying paddle boards with pets and toddlers and picnic baskets. The situation on our road is not safe, and whatever the general thing of balancing needs of residents and visitors, having unsafe parking is not good for either visitors or residents. So whatever else happens with the parking strategy in Deep Cove, there should not be parking on roads that steep, particularly Eastridge Lockhaven.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, John Mears.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me to speak. I'm John Mears. I've been a resident of Eastridge for over 33 years. Thanks, Karen, James, for putting this little focus group together. All the residents of Eastridge, with the exception of 3, have sent you emails. The biggest issue has been safety. Interestingly enough, the staff report doesn't deal with safety at all. Staff report and recommendations. The report seems to be based on slim, if not no database for Lock Haven and Eastridge. In fact, the report states that you did not survey Eastridge. And so what's happened is when you say on the map that you're going to have 70 cars up there or something, there's no way. It's not a chance in hell. You're just looking at a map. You haven't actually walked up Eastridge and seen what it's like. Other sort of soft points is that there's an expression in the report talking about two-way traffic. We're having a tough time getting one-way traffic. And one-way traffic on Lock Haven is getting tight. If you park in the drainage culvert, you can get vehicles by, possibly emergency vehicles. If you don't, then it's not going to go by. There's an implication in the report that enforcement's an issue.
Here's where people in Lock Haven are expected to park.
And basically, enforcement is an issue. Even the bylaw officers can't write off the road and get tickets. So it's an issue. I'm sure if you track the number of complaints from residents to the bylaw guys, you'd see a remarkable amount of reports from the Eastridge residents. The Eastridge is an interesting road, and obviously the staff haven't been up there because there's a number of characteristics of the road that if you've been up there, they'd be in your report, and they're not, so that's pretty obvious. The idea that has been said before about balancing residents, business, and visitors. Sorry, but I agree with Lisa. Basically, businesses pay taxes to the district, residents pay taxes and vote, visitors, nothing. So the priority has to be on the residents first, businesses second. Visitors can go away. I apologize in advance for this, but I thought your report was really poor. Very little data, haven't walked the road, and I would recommend to the council that you do not consider this report, and to accept it or even receive it would be irresponsible at best. Solutions, short term for Lock Haven and Eastridge, no parking or resident parking. Longer term for Cove. Consider the model of 3-hour free parking residential streets as being extremely flawed. It's unmanageable, there's traffic, volume, safety, and enforcement. It's our residential neighborhood. It's not a tourist destination or parking lot. Consider what other models have been used. White Rock, Hicks, Spanish banks, all pay parking, no parking in residential streets. Thanks for your time and attention.
Thank you. Next, Karen Henkel.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Karen Henkel. My family has lived on Eastridge for 28 years. I'm the block watch captain there, and I'm also a past member of the North Vancouver Black Bear Society. We all know that parking is a major concern in the Cove. The new parking restrictions in other parts of Deep Cove have simply pushed the problem to Eastridge and Lock Haven roads. Consequently, our roads, the steepest and the narrowest in the area, have now seen a drastic increase in parking. These roads simply weren't designed for this volume and parking. An example, after a 911 call on our street, we spoke directly to the firefighters attending the scene. They reported that navigating the road with parked vehicles was significantly more time-consuming than normal. Parking that impedes emergency vehicles access is not a minor inconvenience. It is a serious safety issue. It's life critical. Also, the lack of parking restrictions has had a major impact on our residents. 18 neighbors have written letters to the council expressing their concerns. The letters predominantly focus on these issues which have previously been addressed: emergency vehicle access, dangerous driving conditions, and pedestrian safety. Now, we respectfully ask council to act on the evidence presented, reject visitors parking on East Ridge and Lock Haven roads, and we warmly invite any council members or other decision makers to visit us at 4742 East Ridge Road, our home, to experience these conditions firsthand. A brief walk up our roads will illustrate these safety concerns far better than words or pictures could ever convey. We do not believe you should shut the door for changes in 2026. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Next speaker I have is Deb Parslow.
Members of Council, first of all, I'd like to thank engineering, the team that worked on the top part of Dover, the challenging part. I noticed that on page 6 of the council report, it states that the southern section of Dover from Silverdale to Queens will be finished or will be completed next year. I would like to thank the engineering department for recommending that, and I think that the community will be very happy if the fastest speeds on Dover are on the lower parts. With completion of this southern part, the district will have an example of hopefully can be done economically and effectively, and then can be used as a model for other problem roads. I would like to again thank engineering for your help. It's been a challenging process, I know that, but I think you've tried really hard, so thank you.
Your comments, Deb? Double check in. Did anybody else want to add their comments to the meeting? Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. It's Catherine Fairland, Deep Cove. Yes, okay, so a couple of things. The difference between RPO and RE. I live on Deep Cove Road. If it's an RE area, it doesn't matter unless you park there at 7 o'clock in the morning, you don't have a parking spot. So, great, I can park there for 3 hours, but if I have to drive my kid to some event or something, I get home, I can't find a parking spot. And believe me, I can't. I have on several, and I don't have parking in front of my house because it's Depot Road and it gets totally filled every year. So if you want to provide for residents, it has to be RPO. RE doesn't work. And RPO with enforcement is the only way it works, for one thing. One other thing I wanted to say is that Depot Community Association did not receive any notice of this meeting at all. It should have been sent to the Depot Community Association Gmail. You guys, the district knows it. Send it to us. We have a mailing list of 400 people. You have to, you think that it's enough to put it on the website. How many people actually go to the website and see what's going on? For one thing, the website's difficult to navigate. And for another thing, people can't check every, it's on Tuesday morning that you release the agenda. So please, when you have something that is neighborhood specific, most neighborhoods in the district of North Van have a community association. Please send a notice to the community association so that we can let our residents know in means that you don't have access to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another speaker over here, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Al Floyd. I live at 4567 Rayburn. I want to first of all thank members of council and staff for finally recognizing that Rayburn, Lock Haven, and East Ridge needs some attention. And again, I agree with the last speaker there. I've sent several emails on this subject to members of council, but I only found out about this workshop today because one of the councilors thankfully advised me. Now, I don't know if we can get that slide back up that relates to this.
I don't have control.
No, okay. But just to show you the little plan here.
Here you go.
Oh, okay, thank you.
It's coming back.
Doesn't like me.
Yeah.
Speaking of one-way streets, this is all one-way. Everybody that comes down Rayburn, Lock Haven, East Ridge has to go back out that. Rayburn Street, at the moment, with no restrictions at all, parking circulation, and the park talks about vehicles circulating to look for spaces, it usually gets filled up by 9 o'clock in the morning. So everybody that comes down looking for parking all over here, they go back out again. When you turn it into 3-hour parking, it's gonna make the situation worse, in my opinion. Because there will be turnover with people leaving, there'll be cars pulling out. Already they line up here, waiting for, they'll stand there for 20 minutes sometimes, hoping somebody will pull out so they can look down and get the spot. And there have been all those crashes and pedestrians are walking up and down here with paddle boards, picnicking equipment and whatnot. So 3-hour parking is going to make it worse because there'll be more circling and traffic and parking. And the other thing that I've noticed is that this is the only street at the moment that has no parking restrictions. So a lot of people that work in the Cove, belong to the yacht club, I'll see their vehicles parked there because it's the only place that they can park all day. So, and most of the members of the yacht club, for example, are North Vancouver residents and the Eastern District residents. So when they come down and want to take the boat out for the day, they have to come down, drop the kids and family off at the yacht club and all their gear, drive back home. Some of them have actually bought scooters so they can ride it back to join, but they do here. Now, if this was resident-only parking, period, it would not only help the traffic problem, but it would allow, if permits can be issued for, say, people that do business in the Cove, like people that work there, they can have a permit to be allowed to park here. That would be a benefit to the commercial aspect. It would be a benefit to the residents because it minimizes the traffic problems. And I think in one other little point I'd like to make, and it's a kind of an onion right here, actually. And this little section of the road here is narrower than the rest of it. So this is barely two-way traffic here. This is definitely from Parkside Lane to here, one-way traffic. So we get
If you
people.
could draw it to a close, that would be appreciated, your overtime. If you could draw it to a close, please.
Sorry?
If you could draw it to a close, your overtime, thanks.
Yeah. So it's a traffic hazard. So we get people parked here, people coming up here, some of them refuse to back up. People come running around the corner of Parkside and suddenly can't go anywhere. This is a traffic problem. So I think there should be no parking signs, I would recommend, for this little section here, which is about 3 parking spaces.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Al.
I have virtual participants, Sahar Kito, can you hear me? Oh, actually, we're gonna have to move you over as a panelist, just give me a sec.
Should be there momentarily.
Sahar Kito, can you hear me? You're marked as muted in the Zoom system.
Oh, there we go. Hi, can you hear me?
Here we go. I can, but I'm gonna have to ask you to speak nice and loud.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to touch on the fact that Berkeley Road is no longer being considered for any safety upgrades. In 2022, there was already a traffic study done that showed that there's an excessive speed problem on that road. It's noted as 85th percentile for speed. So 85% of the vehicles are going above 60, 15% are going even higher than that. So, and the speed limit is actually 50. So there already is quite a bit of information on the problems on Berkeley, and now it's being flagged first on the list to address. And while it's an arterial road, and I understand the concept of why you can't necessarily slow it down, I think that we need to keep it on the table as a road in the district that needs to be looked at, because Berkeley Road is serving families, schools, and daycares. That is all. If you're entering into this neighborhood, you're not entering to do anything other than to go home, go to school or drop your kids off at one of the local care facilities. And Berkeley Road is the way in and the way out. It is a steep hill. There's no four-way stop signs. There's a million blind spots. And frankly, there's people walking all over the place trying to get from A to B, which is their homes and to schools and to daycare. So please don't take Berkeley off. You have a lot of information there. Look at the report from 2022. It's already being listed as a problem.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that we're considering Berkeley under a different program.
Correct.
So it's not that we're not addressing the concerns on Berkeley, we've just moved it to a different program for consideration. So.
No, I know that, but that other gentleman said that they're still going to continue to collect data and it may take another year or two. But if you put that year or two already on the existing study that was done in 2025, then that's already 5 years of waiting for something to happen. Just within this year, a pedestrian was hit on the corner of Berkeley and Carnation. The amount of jaywalking and U-turns that take place is excessive. So unless the district is waiting for some kind of irreversible catastrophe, then yeah, let's put it on another schedule. But since you've already decided that it's a problem, since people have come out and spoken independently in our neighborhood to cite it as a problem, why not address it now in this budget of $200,000 and at minimum address the lower portion at 900 block? You already have the study. There's already money. Can't we just do a little bit to make sure people aren't getting hurt? It's a very difficult stretch of road.
Thank you very much for your comments, Sahar Kito. Okay, council. Just want to double check that we've met the needs that, yeah, they've provided the report. Yes, okay. All right, we've completed the business for this evening's meeting, so I will accept adjournment. Accepted. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, staff, for your presentations tonight and for preparing the materials for our consideration. We do appreciate it. We have another workshop tomorrow night, council. Just a reminder that that is a virtual workshop participating in, and so encourage you all to get a comfortable spot to access that meeting virtually. And that, everybody have a great week.